Welcome to the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in critical times. Here's your host, Bill Kelly.
Should the Canadian government react to this? Should they demand the expulsion of Hoekstra as the ambassador to this country? Now, they can force him out. There's two ways this can work here. The Trump administration can recall him. Said, so, okay, this is not working out. And we've seen that happen in the past with ambassadors to different countries when things are getting a little testy. Or the Canadian government can boot him out. They simply say, get out. We don't want you in our country anymore. It's up to the Canadian government to make a hard and fast decision to say, look, we're tired of this guy. We're tired of his incendiary comments. We're tired of the lies that he's telling. We don't want him in his country anymore. It's a bold move, but it's something I think the government at least has to consider at this stage. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast, critical discussions in these very critical times. I'm your host, Bill Kelly. Good to have you with us today. And thank you for all the feedback that we're getting. Some great comments about the podcast we did with Dr. Laurie Turnbull just a little while ago. And thanks also to those of you who are hitting the subscribe button. Your support through your subscriptions helps us to continue to do this work and to bring you these stories and to bring you the facts as opposed to the fiction that you're going to get and the spin that you're going to get from some of the politicians. An educated opinion, of course, is what we're striving for here. And we want to give you as much of that as we can so that you can make educated opinions and decisions about what's going on in this country right now, which is a very pivotal time, of course. Now, on today's podcast, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Canada's favorite ambassador, foreign ambassador, that is. We're talking, of course, about Pete Hoekstra. Now, we've talked about Hoekstra in past podcasts a lot because, to suggest that he is outspoken, I think, is a massive understatement. Hoekstra is from Michigan, and he's appointed as the U.S. ambassador to Canada by Donald Trump. That happened just a few months ago, of course. He's had the job before, but not here. He apparently was a diplomatic appointee of Trump in the first administration. He was over in Holland, in the Netherlands, and caused quite a few stirs. There's a good picture of our dear friend there, he said sarcastically. Well, Hoekstra was at it again because this is a guy who, instead of trying to, develop diplomatic channels between the two countries, seems to think that it's his role in this job as ambassador to simply criticize the Canadian government, and something that he is not very good at, but of course, It makes news, and that's, I guess, what Trump likes, and not necessarily what's going to be in the best interest of the two countries. So the latest episode occurred at a conference that was held just a couple of days ago in Ottawa, and I want to reference a story that was on the cbc.ca webpage. We'll run it up there. It's on the screen for you right now. The U.S. ambassador to Canada goes on expletive-laced tirade at Ontario's trade representative, according to witnesses. Katie Simpson from CBC News wrote the story here. Let me give you a few lines of the story for context, and then we'll do some commentary and give you the story behind the story. The U.S. ambassador to Canada delivered an expletive-laced tirade at Ontario's trade representative at this event in Ottawa this past Monday, according to multiple witnesses. Word spread quickly through some of the most powerful circles in Ottawa and Washington after this encounter, which happened during the Canadian-American Business Council State of the Relationship event, which was held at the National Gallery of Canada, of course, up in Ottawa. Now, typically, high-profile gathering is used to network and celebrate the Canada-U.S. relationship. It draws a mix of cabinet ministers, diplomats, and business leaders. Monday's event drew Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand. Dominic LeBlanc was there, the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, among others. So here's the scoop, and here's where it gets rather salacious. As Katie writes in the CBC article, witnesses say they saw U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra launch into an expletive-laden tirade at Ontario's trade representative, one David Paterson. Now, one witness said that Hoekstra appeared to be upset about the anti-tariff ad that the province recently ran on television in the United States, which has infuriated Donald Trump. Now, the witness said Hoekstra could be heard using the F word and also mentioned Ontario Premier Doug Ford by name. These witnesses spoke to CBC on the condition that they not be named. But here's the scoop. And again, Hoekstra has made comments about this in the past, but really what he's doing here with his F-bombs that he was dropping at this particular event is he's the echo chamber for Donald Trump. Trump was really pissed about this. And as we've talked about in one of the previous podcasts, it's a bit of a head-scratcher because Trump first referred to this commercial in kind of an offhanded manner a few days, middle of last week, and just said, yeah, I saw the commercial. It looks like Canada's trying to get back at us or something, and then left it and went on to something else. Well, he meanders with his speeches all the time. But it wasn't until 2 days later that all of a sudden he just apparently was in a fit of rage about this. And that's when he came down and said, okay, we're going to charge an extra 10% in tariffs on just about everything. And, do also cancel Christmas. I mean, Trump wanted to do everything to try to get Canada going. So that was the context for this whole thing. And, of course, Hoekstra, as Trump's lapdog, is simply going to echo the sort of comments that Trump was making. So it caused a bit of a furor, and it's not the sort of thing, quite frankly, that diplomats, like ambassadors, are supposed to do. That's an important factor here. Their job is to be the bridge between the two countries. He's the U.S. representative right here in Canadian capital, in Ottawa. So, they're supposed to go back and forth. And yes, they're supposed to reflect the policy of their government that they represent. But at the same time, they're supposed to establish relationship and build bridges. That's something Hoekstra doesn't seem to do. He likes to demolish bridges, apparently, but not build them. So what was the reaction? Well, no official reaction yet from the federal government, but at a news conference on Wednesday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, not one to shy away from controversy or give an opinion, weighed in on this. He urged Hoekstra to make amends with Paterson, according to the article on CBC. His quote says, Pete, you got to call Dave up and apologize. It's simple. The cheese slipped off the cracker. He's great with metaphors, isn't he? He says, I get it. You ticked off. I get that. But call the guy up because you're a good guy and Dave's my champion, according to Ford. Now, I know some people are going to say, CBC, okay, can you trust them? Yeah, you can, first of all. Toronto Sun, Globe and Mail, and many other media outlets reported this. So it happened. And there's a consistent theme through this whole thing. So, sometimes you get three different sets of opinions and three different versions of a story because of different perspectives from the reporters. Well, they were all on the same page, if I can use that metaphor, on this one. They saw what Hoekstra said. They heard what he said, certainly, as well. And they're responding to this. Now, there has been no official response from the U.S. government about this. So I don't know what's going on here. Trump, of course, is out of the country. He's in South Korea right now. And so I don't know if the reporters are going to ask him about that. But what it does is it fits a pattern that we've talked about here on the podcast. And it's basically, again, kind of a reference and a mirror image of what Trump is trying to do on the international stage right now. And that's basically to crap all over the longtime allies, the NATO allies, the G7 allies, and the trading allies that the U.S. has established over the years, and basically rip that whole piece asunder and start all over again. And here in Canada, of course, we know about this and we've talked about this, and our point of reference is going to be the free trade agreements that were, initially negotiated and signed by Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney. That's how far back they go. And, of course, there have been updates and reiterations of those over the years. The most recent one was during Trump's first administration when he did we call it the Kuzma deal up here. And it was tough sledding. It took a long time, over a year of back and forth between Robert Lighthizer, who was the Trump representative in those negotiations, and Chrystia Freeland, who was the lead for the Canadian delegation at that time. But they got a deal. That's the history of it. They did get a deal. They signed it. There was a big signing ceremony. It was televised. And Trump gushed over that deal and said, this is the best trading deal in the history of the world. We're all going to live happily ever after and prosper, and it's going to be great. Well, in his second iteration, in his second term, and he's crapped all over this thing. It says it's terrible, it's unfair. How could that get in there? How could that get in there? Well, you signed off on it, buddy. I mean, it was your deal. So the short answer is you did, Donald. You're the ones that's responsible for this. But Trump never has and never will admit to anything or any faults or anything. That's just his nature. And I guess that kind of goes along with the fact that he just feels that he's omnipotent. And there's so many people in the MAGA crowd that seem to support that sort of feeling. But it doesn't work in diplomatic circles. That's the key here. And Hoekstra doesn't seem to give a damn about that. He's not trying to build relationships. He's not trying to smooth things over that may have gone off the guardrails a little bit. He's basically the guy who's pushing things off the guardrails by some of the statements that he's made. And he's been very upfront about this. Trump's comments about Canada being the 51st state and the kind of upset that caused. At first, Hoekstra defended all that. As a matter of fact, he even talked about it just a couple of days ago. and said that, oh, Trump's just saying that it's really a term of endearment because he likes Canada. Well, how naive does he think we are? But that's him trying to backtrack on some of the rather incendiary things that he said in the past. So he is what he is. But what happened here with this particular incident and Hoekstra's comments about this is really a microcosm of the deteriorating relationship between the Canadian and the U.S. governments. But as long as this attitude is prevalent, and apparently, according to Hoekstra, it's going to maintain itself for quite some time, there's no chance of some sort of a relationship and some sort of a trade deal. So what this is not just a rogue ambassador, Hoekstra in this case, making some comments that the government, the U.S. government, is going to have to backtrack and try to smooth over. They probably applaud this. I think they're probably happy that he's poking the Canadian government once again. But it's indicative of the attitude that they have, and I think we need to keep that in mind. All right. This is a warning to one of us and to all of us, not just in the negotiating team on Carney's side, but to us as citizens who are getting frustrated by the lack of deals and how come you haven't done anything about this and why haven't you signed off anything. It really goes all the way back to what we've talked about. The Americans don't want a deal. They want to embarrass us. They want to try to cripple our economy so that we will come begging to them and say, please, take us in as the 51st state. Take our minerals, take our water, take our lumber, take our... No, not going to happen. No matter what you want to say, Hoekstra, no matter what kind of vile things you want to throw away on behalf of the U.S. government towards the Canadian government, we will stand strong as a united nation. And sadly, not everybody on this side of the border seems to get that, Mr. Poilievre. But as long as our government does, and as long as we stand up for what's going on, then I think, this is the best way for us to carry our things forward and just see what we can do. It's going to get better at some point, but we just don't know exactly when. So that's the context, that's the background. But the overriding question that many of us are asking these days is, how does the Canadian government respond officially? As we say, there's no official explanation yet from Ottawa or any sense as to how they're going to do this and how they're going to handle Hoekstra. Forget about Trump. We already know about Trump. Should the Canadian government react to this? Should they demand the expulsion of Hoekstra as the ambassador to this country? Now, they can force him out. There's two ways this can work here. The Trump administration can recall him. Said, so, okay, this is not working out. And we've seen that happen in the past with ambassadors to different countries when things are getting a little testy. Or the Canadian government can boot him out. They simply say, get out. We don't want you in our country anymore. Which is usually is a cause for more diplomatic hassles because the U.S. government would have to respond. I'm at the point, and I think a lot of Canadians are at the point right now saying, who cares if they get pissed off at us? Maybe the right thing to do is to simply say, get this guy out of here. He's not helping relations. He's hurting relations. We mentioned at the beginning of the show here that Hoekstra had an appointment in the Netherlands. That did not go well. And the Dutch governments did not like what he was doing there. I guess the leopard can't change its spots. This is the way this guy is. They may like it in Washington. Donald Trump may be rubbing his hands with glee that Hoekstra is making these sorts of comments. But this is a classic example right now where the Canadian government does not have to take this crap. They do not have to sit there and simply say, oh, well, that's just Trump representative and that's just these people being, Trumpish. No, if the stand has to be made, then it's up to the Canadian government to make a hard and fast decision to say, look, we're tired of this guy. We're tired of his incendiary comments. We're tired of the lies that he's telling. We don't want him in this country anymore. It's a bold move, but it's something I think the government at least has to consider at this stage. And yes, that includes considering the ramifications of making a decision like that. But, as one individual mentioned to me the other day when this whole started, how could it get much worse as far as the diplomacy is concerned? What's he going to do? Give us more tariffs again? Maybe. But, I'd rather have my integrity and the Canadian government have their integrity than to simply cave in and let these guys run rampant all over us, verbally or otherwise. And that's what seems to be happening right now. We'll see what happens. See how the Canadian government's going to handle this. That's it for this edition of the podcast. As always, thanks so much for being with us. If you're on YouTube, thank you for hitting the notification bell, please, to pass the word along. And, of course, the subscription button, as we talked about at the beginning of the show. Your support to help us to continue this work is greatly appreciated. Thank you, as always, to Madeline Kelly for the great work putting this one together. Until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Bill Kelly Podcast brought to you by Wizen's Law, personal injury lawyers. Listen, you didn't choose to get injured, but you can choose the right lawyer. Wizen's Law, 905-522-1102 or wizenslaw.com.